When I arrived at what was left of my childhood home, I didn't know whether to scream or throw up. The smoke was still thick and acrid, clinging to everything like a physical weight, stinging my eyes and filling my throat with the taste of everything I once loved turning to ash. I could see the silhouette of my father standing by the smoldering pile, the orange embers still glowing like a physical representation of his rage, and my chest just felt hollow asterisk. He didn't even look regretful when I approached. He looked proud asterisk. He told me that this was what happened when you valued things over family, that I was materialistic and needed to learn humility, and that he was doing this for my own good, to teach me a lesson. I just stared at the glowing remains of my books, my art, my childhood drawings, and the only tangible connections I had to my mother, who had passed away 3 years prior, and felt something in me completely snap asterisk. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was cold, hard, calculating fury. I was the person he was trying to humiliate. But tell me, would you have stood by and let someone, even your own parent, incinerate every single memory and possession you had just to prove a sadistic point? Or would you have started planning the most profound, life-altering lesson they could possibly imagine? Because I didn't just cry. I vowed that this moment wouldn't be the end of my story. It would be the fuel for the fire that was about to burn his entire life down, piece by piece. To understand how my father reached the point where burning his only child's possessions seemed like a logical parenting decision, you have to understand the family dynamic, especially after my mother died. Before that, things were manageable. My dad was always strict and a bit quick to anger, the classic, my way or the highway type, but my mom was the stabilizer. She balanced his hardness with warmth and made sure his discipline never crossed the line into cruelty. But when she was gone, it was like the dam broke. All his insecurity and need for control intensified tenfold, especially towards me. I was 19 when she passed, and suddenly I became the singular focus of all his unprocessed grief, frustration, and resentment. See, my dad had this vision of what a good son should be, one who never questioned authority, went into the family trade. Though he actually worked in administration for a construction company, a stable, unremarkable job that he somehow treated like a high-stakes corporate environment, and above all, stayed in his lane. But I was the opposite. I was artistic, bookish, loved computers, and wanted to study graphic design. When I started university and began pushing towards a career in UX design, a concept he couldn't grasp and therefore dismissed as playing around with pictures, the friction between us escalated from simple disagreements to full-blown psychological warfare. He saw my interests not as differences, but as defiance. To him, my creative projects, my growing tech setup, the high-end computer I'd built myself, the expensive design monitors, the rare graphic novels I'd carefully collected, the high-quality art supplies, were all evidence that I was coddled and lost. When I started getting internships and actually making good money instead of being proud, he seemed threatened. He'd make snide remarks about me getting lucky or how it wasn't a real job that required real work. Looking back, I think he needed me to be dependent on him so he could feel powerful. The summer before my final year of university, I had a fantastic internship that was set to lead to a full-time offer, but I was still living at home to save money. This meant I was stuck under my father's roof and his absolute rule. He create arbitrary rules that seemed designed solely for me to fail. No screens after 8 p.m. Dinner is exactly at 6:30 p.m. No excuses. You must complete your chores, which often meant doing pointless yard work that was already done before you can touch your computer. The tension was always just below the surface. He would constantly try to provoke me, but I was focused, working on my portfolio, my studies, and this internship. I was doing my best to stay out of his way, to be respectful but firm about my boundaries. The incident that led to everything began when he walked into my room one afternoon and saw my desk, cluttered with my dual monitor setup, my Wacom tablet, my sketchbook open with designs, and several stacks of new books I'd recently bought. To him, this wasn't the workspace of a hardworking student. It was junk cluttering his house. He told me I needed to clean it up or he would. I was already in the middle of a deadline, and I told him as calmly as I could, "Dad, this is my equipment for my job. I'm currently using it. It's not junk and I need it. When I'm finished, I will put things away, but this is asterisk my workplace right now. That set him off. He hated when I talked back, even if it was logical. He saw my refusal to capitulate instantly as a challenge to his authority. I said, clean it up. I don't want to see this CRP in my house. I said, okay, Dad, I understand, but I can't move it right now. As soon as I finish this project tonight, I promise I'll organize everything. He didn't say anything. He just gave me that cold, dead look that always preceded his outbursts. But then he just walked out, and I thought the argument was over. I was so wrong. Later that afternoon, I was still working when my phone rang. It was my manager from the internship, calling with a small issue on one of my projects. I stepped outside into the backyard, away from the hum of my computer and my dad's inevitable grumbling, to have a better signal. The call lasted maybe 10 or 15 minutes. While I was talking, I started smelling something. At first, I just thought the neighbors were having an early evening barbecue. But the smell wasn't rich and delicious. It was sharp and acrid, like burning rubber and plastic. When the call ended and I walked back to the patio, I saw the smoke rising from the edge of our yard, where the fence met the field behind us. Panic immediately seized me. I started running towards the area, thinking my dad must be having a trash fire or something went wrong with the old mower. But when I got there, I didn't see yard waste. I saw my monitors. I saw my custom-built PC, the plastic side panel melting like wax over the scorched components. I saw pages from my graphic novels curling and blackening in the heat. I saw my art supplies, my tablet, my sketchbooks, and then, the most painful blow, I saw my childhood albums and some of my mother's old jewelry boxes that I had been keeping in my closet, all thrown into this pit of hell. My dad was standing right there, poking the pile with a shovel, looking at the destruction with a chilling sense of accomplishment. I screamed. I literally screamed. It was a guttural sound I didn't know I was capable of. Dad, what did you do? Why are you doing this? I started trying to grab things with my bare hands, ignoring the pain of the heat, trying to pull a melted corner of a photo album free. But he blocked me with the shovel. I told you to clean it up, he said, his voice flat and terrifyingly calm. I told you you were coddled and needed a lesson. You didn't listen. This is what happens when you value things more than obeying your father. It's time you learned how to survive without your gadgets. This is for your own good, so you appreciate what actually matters. For the next week, I was a zombie. I had to stay with a friend, unable to even look at my father. I could only retrieve the few items that hadn't been incinerated, which amounted to a few clothes I had in the laundry and some shoes. My academic career was on the brink. My portfolio, my files, everything was gone, though luckily some was on the cloud. The physical loss was devastating. My father, meanwhile, acted as if he had performed a necessary, albeit difficult, duty. When I finally called him to say I was coming to get my remaining clothes and that I would not be returning, he just said, "Well, maybe you've finally grown up. Don't expect me to pay your rent." I didn't need him to. I was 19, traumatized, but incredibly motivated. My friend's family was wonderfully supportive, and I started putting all my energy into rebuilding. I used the money from my internship, which I was lucky to keep. My manager was understanding, and some savings I had to get basic equipment. I worked harder than I ever had in my life. The fury was my fuel. I got my UX job immediately upon graduation with a high salary, far higher than what my dad was earning. Within 2 years, I was already at a senior level, my income was rapidly increasing, and I had started investing heavily. I completely cut contact with my father, blocking him on all channels. No holidays, no birthdays, nothing. But I never stopped thinking about what he did. I never stopped thinking about that smoldering pile of my life. Fast forward about 7 years later. I was 26, my career was soaring, my investments were paying off better than I could have imagined, and I had a substantial nest egg. I was finally ready to start looking for my own place. I was searching for properties in a nearby upscale town when I stumbled upon a listing that stopped my heart. Not a house in the new town, but the asterisk house, the childhood home, our home. The address was etched into my brain like a scar. Curiosity, mixed with a healthy dose of anxiety, got the better of me, so I dug deeper into the public records. My father had taken out multiple mortgages over the years, seemingly stretching himself thin on consumer goods, ironic, considering what he preached about materialism and some bad investments. Now, The property taxes were in severe arrears, and the bank had initiated foreclosure proceedings. A sense of poetic justice washed over me, a feeling of cold satisfaction that I hadn't felt in years. The house that he had used as his kingdom, the place where he had enforced his authority, was being taken away from him. He was losing his control, and the real-world lesson he had so desperately wanted me to learn was finally catching up to him. I checked the status again, and the sheriff's sale, the foreclosure auction, was scheduled for 2 weeks later. This wasn't a private listing. This was a public process. I immediately contacted my lawyer and financial advisor. We analyzed the situation, and with my liquid assets and pre-approved funding, it was entirely feasible for me to place a cash bid on the property. My mind made a choice that I didn't even realize it was making until the plan was already set in motion. I wasn't going to save him from foreclosure, but I also wasn't going to let anyone else have that house. Not yet. Before I took the step that would change everything, before I attended that auction and effectively bought my father's ruin, I had to stop and ask myself, am I going too far? The situation I was in was incredible. The person who had taken so much from me, who had tried to teach me humility by burning my very identity, was now facing the ultimate loss and humiliation himself. He was about to be homeless, and I was the one with the means to make that happen. I had to think about whether this was about true justice, or if I was simply letting my desire for vengeance consume me. This wasn't just about reclaiming a physical space. It was about reclaiming the power he had so cruelly stolen. So right here, I want you to be the judge. Before I tell you what I did and the utter chaos that followed, I want you to pause this video. Seriously, stop and go down to the comments right now. Tell me what you would have done if you were in my shoes. Would you have let it go, let him face the consequences on his own, and just watched him fall from a safe distance? Or would you have gone to that auction, placed your bid, and seen this through to the very end? Because the choice I made was a dangerous one, and I'm still not sure if it was the right one, only that it was my asterisk choice to make. Day of the auction arrived, a crisp, cold winter morning. The county building lobby was buzzing with professional real estate investors, a few nervous families, and the regular auction vultures. I stood off to the side, wearing an expensive wool coat and looking every bit the successful professional I was. No one here knew who I was. No one here knew my connection to the brick split-level property on the list. When the auction for parcel 14A7 was announced, my heart hammered in my chest. This was it. The bidding started low, but a few local investors quickly drove it up. I let them play their games for a moment, and then I stepped in. I didn't just counterbid, I raised by thousands. The key to these auctions is intimidation, showing you have the liquid cash and you're not playing games. Each time someone tried to top my bid, I instantly raised it, my voice clear and confident. I could feel the eyes of the room turning toward me, including the investors who finally threw up their hands, unable to match my aggression. When the gavel finally hit and the auctioneer announced, "Sold to the gentleman with the cash deposit for," naming the final amount, I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. It was done. The house was mine, not a home where I would live with my family, but a symbol, a title. I finalized the paperwork, handed over the cashier's check, and received the certificate of purchase. Now came the final act of this decade-long performance. My lawyer drew up the formal documents, and a licensed process server was hired. I didn't want to be the one to serve him. I needed this to be cold and official. 2 days after the auction, the server arrived at my father's, or rather, my asterisk, front door. My father, according to the later police report, answered the door in his bathrobe, confused. The server handed him the papers, the official notice of foreclosure sale, the certificate of sale, and the formal eviction notice. Attached was a cover sheet I had custom drafted, which contained the single sentence, "Dear Father, I hope you've finally grown up and learned your lesson about humility. I value my things, and now I own yours." He apparently didn't even process the content at first. He just saw the name of the new owner and the fact that he was being given 30 days to vacate. The server reported that my father tried to tear the papers up, screaming, "This is impossible. That's my son. This has to be a mistake." But it was no mistake. And the final clause of the eviction notice was the true dagger. He was explicitly forbidden from removing anything that was considered a fixture of the house, which included all the built-in shelving he had installed, the custom lighting fixtures. one of his few pride and joy home improvement projects. And crucially, asterisk, my mother's favorite old grandfather clock, which was technically built into the living room alcove and thus a fixture under state law. He was losing not just the roof over his head, but his control over every aspect of his home and every possession he still cherished. The following 30 days were a circus of rage and despair, though I only witnessed it secondhand. He tried to call me, but his number was blocked. He tried to email, but his emails were routed to a folder I never looked at. He apparently went to the local police station to report that I was stealing his house, only to be politely explained that I was the legal owner and that his foreclosure was a result of his own actions. My lawyer was swamped with increasingly erratic demands from the few friends and relatives my dad still had left, trying to act as go-betweens. "You can't do this to your father. He's an old man. Think of your mother." To all of them, I had a simple reply. "Where were you when he burned my mother's belongings? Where were you when he destroyed my life? He wanted me to learn a lesson. Well, now he is." As the eviction date drew near, he apparently started trashing the inside of the house in spite. This was fine. I had planned on renovating the whole thing anyway, but my lawyer advised me to get a restraining order to prevent him from doing permanent structural damage. On day 29, he was physically escorted from the property by the local sheriff's office, with nothing but 2 suitcases of his personal items, leaving behind the furniture, the built-in shelves, and my mother's beloved grandfather clock, all now legally mine. He was homeless, but I had made sure that the few items he could keep from her were the ones he valued least, while I preserved the things she loved most. It was cold. It was calculating, and it felt like justice. The aftermath was exactly as messy as you'd expect. I didn't keep the house. After I had the interior cleared out, this time the items I didn't want were legally and professionally disposed of. I'm not a monster. I put the property on the market. In that housing market, and with the clean state I left it in, the sale happened quickly and for a profit. I took that money, the final profit from my father's house, and did 2 things. I set aside the amount I would need to replace my original equipment and belongings that he had burned, calculating it with interest, and I spent it on myself, getting the high-end tech I had always wanted, purchasing rare first-edition graphic novels, and rebuilding my art studio. But the remainder of the profit, which was substantial, I donated to a nonprofit that specialized in helping young adults who had been victims of family emotional and financial abuse, specifically helping them get housing and career resources. It felt like the final, perfect resolution. My father, meanwhile, is now living with one of his distant cousins who apparently took him in out of pity, though I've heard their relationship is strained and that he's become a shadow of his former controlling self. The lesson, it seems, has finally been taught, just not by him and not to me. So when I look back at this whole journey, from that horrifying smoky pile to the cold auction floor, I don't feel regret. I feel a complex mix of sadness for what our relationship could have been, but a profound sense of closure. He tried to break me, to destroy my identity and my future to secure his own sense of power. Instead, I used his own cruelty as fuel, built my own life from the ashes, and used the legal system to show him what real control and real consequences looked like. Was what I did cruel? Maybe, but I refuse to believe it was unearned. You can't spend your life trying to break people and then expect them to save you when you fall. My revenge wasn't a fire that just consumed. It was a fire that purified, that burned away the last remnants of my fear and left me with something true. I have my life back. I have my career. I have a home where I feel safe. And I have the knowledge that the only lesson that was truly learned was his. If you agree that he deserved this, or if you think I went too far, please share your thoughts. Like this video if you think this kind of justice is satisfied, and subscribe for more stories where the people you'd expect to win are the ones who ultimately lose. I'll see you all in the next story.